Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. I'm not really sure what to say this morning. I know that's something you won't hear very often from preachers generally, but especially from me. Some of you might even be thinking, if you had notes, you probably would have something to say, wouldn't you? I do have something to say. The question is how to say it. I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last while, more people are using social media than ever before. More people are reading, for lack of a better way of saying this, more people are reading things they see on the internet. And that's a great thing because it's a great way to share information and to ensure that everyone has precisely the right information. I should have little cue things that say, that's sarcasm. It's also a way to find out that all of those people that you knew in your life that you didn't realize were medical experts, constitutional law experts, lawyers, and now have all of the best information that's way better than the actual experts, constitutional lawyers, and just the people who are supposed to know stuff. Here's the thing. We're communicating more, but we need to be discerning more. We need to be super careful sometimes to make sure that we're getting the right information. Now is a really important time. I jokingly said that earlier on that for some people this weekend is going to be Freedom Weekend because it's over, we're good. I know, I read it on Facebook, and it's not going to be wrong if I read it on Facebook. It's not over. We slowed it down, and now we have a little bit more freedom. We still have to be careful. We still have to be careful. And the thing you need to be most careful about is to make sure that you're reading the information that is true. And not just because somebody said it really loudly and forcefully. Or painted it in graffiti on the side of a church or a school, or yelled it at you from a street corner while they were holding a gun and had a mask over their face. Or said it because it's just they knew it was what you wanted to hear. Because we've had incidents of that all week long. Well, the last few weeks anyway. Just this past week in Saskatoon, the seminary that I went to and several other churches in Saskatoon had graffiti spray painted on them, hate speech about the LGBTQ community. That's why they were targeted, is because they are affirming places that welcome everyone regardless of their gender or sexual orientation, and in fact not only affirm that, but aspire to share it and create not just a place of welcome, but a place of support and care. Somebody expressed themselves by spray painting graffiti on their buildings. Also, in the last little while, we've heard medical experts be contradicted by politicians. We've heard constitutional lawyers being contradicted by your buddy on Facebook. We've heard all sorts of different opinions. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, as long as it's opinions, and you remember their opinions. And you need to investigate and find out more. Please, investigate and find out more. I started with that because, well, you heard the story. And earlier this week I wrote, this is the kind of story we need right now. I'm sure I personally stole that from Seth Meyers, who does a bit on his show. This is the kind of story we need right now. But it's not like everybody else has used it too, I'm sure. You know there's a moment when you need to hear a story, and it's the story you need to hear right now. And this is the story we need. Last week's story, you know, the one where Stephen gets stoned to death? Not the story we need right now. The story we need right now is how Paul found a way to share the story of Jesus that was engaging and promoted discussion. It didn't necessarily sway the whole room, but he offered it in a way that promoted discussion and thought. It's so easy to not. It's so easy to simply just express what we think or what's our opinion. It's so easy to even just express the facts. Here's the facts. Boom, boom, boom. Whether you like it that way or not, here's how you're going to get it. Right now, we need to create an environment where people feel like they can have conversation, like they can share their opinion, but they can also be discerning and find out the truth, find out the facts. And here's a story where, and you know, I'm sure from our perspective, and when I say our perspective, I'm sure from the perspective of somebody who belongs to a particular religious tradition or a particular faith tradition. You know the stories, you read the Bible, or you read the Quran, or you read your books that are part of your tradition. We come to a point where we believe this is who we are, and therefore, why wouldn't anyone want to be that? We read the stories of Jesus, I'm sure, sometimes and go, how is it that they were not happy about this? How is it that he didn't get the whole crowd on side? We hear about the first disciples going out and sharing the story about Paul traveling all around the Mediterranean. And you wonder, why wasn't everyone instantly a follower of Jesus? It's the good news. It's about communication too, isn't it? It's about communication of not just what we think, but sharing it with people who might actually not agree with us. And right now, there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of people who want to just open up everything. We're good, we're done, the thing's over. There's a lot of people who are really anxious and concerned about that and don't want us to move too quickly. And then there's a big wash of people in the middle who want to know more so that we can make a decision and come to a place where we feel comfortable with how we're proceeding. As we hear more and more hopeful things, right? The numbers are down. They're working on a vaccine. I saw a story about they're testing a vaccine in Halifax and other places around the world too, right? We'll have vaccines soon. It's all over, except it isn't. We slowed it down. And we need to find out more. But everyone has an opinion about it, and everyone has a concern about it, and everyone has their own thoughts about it. So please find out from the experts what's the truth. Be discerning about it. Don't let someone convince you of the truth just because they have a super cool meme on Facebook. Don't let someone convince you it's the truth because they graffitied it on your wall. Don't let someone convince you it's the truth because if you don't, you're going to burn in the fiery lake for eternity. Sorry, that was a double. That was both a threat and I said it with a louder voice. Here's Paul. He's been traveling around. He's been to various places where he has not been well received. And not just in Greece, but various places where he has not been, in fact, been chased out of town in some cases. People didn't want to hear what he had to say. And he comes to Athens, where famously philosophers, right? There's a lot of philosophers, a lot of teachers, a lot of people who engage in debate simply because they like debate. and he talks to some of them. He doesn't just go to the synagogue, he talks to some of the philosophers. And they say, I don't know about this. It sounds like this guy's promoting a new god. I don't know. We should have more. Let's take him to the courthouse and get him to speak to everybody, to the lawmakers and to everybody. And we can have some debate about it. So they take him to the Areopagus, and on the way there, Paul sees all the temples. And so when he gets to the Areopagus, the first thing he says is, listen, I see all the temples that you have, and just so you know, you're all wrong. You're going to burn in the fiery lake for eternity. He does not say that. He immediately says, look, we're all on the same page here. I see you guys are devoutly religious. I am too. Let me share a little bit of my story with you. I see that you have all these temples, and I see that there's one that says an unknown God. And you know, by now, some of the Greeks sitting there are thinking, yeah, you notice how smart we are, right? We covered everything. We thought of everything. We have a temple for each of the gods we know, but just in case we missed one, we don't want to get punished for that, so we'll cover all the bases and we'll have a place for the unknown God. And then Paul says, I'm going to tell you who the unknown God is. I know the unknown God. It's the one true God. It's the one God who is all of these other gods. You have a separate God for all of these things? Well, there is one God who takes care of all of those things. One God who created. One God who is in things. One God who brings life to things. And he goes on to talk about it even more. And he says, about halfway through that, he says, not only that, I'd just like to point out that some of your most famous philosophers, and he quotes two of them, that is where we get, if an old-time Anglican myself, I remember hearing the prayer that has the words in it, the God in whom we live and move and have our being. Paul stole it from a Greek philosopher. He quoted their own people. He found common ground, and he found things where we're sharing this. We're different words, different ideas maybe, in some cases, different thoughts about what it might look like or how we might get there, but we're all the same. We're starting in the same place. Here's where I think, if Paul were here today, he would have framed it as, I hear you guys saying that we're all in the same boat, but we're not. We're just not. We're all on the same sea. We could be all in the same storm. Probably a hurricane or one of those class 5 storms. But we're not all in the same boat. We each have our own individual way of coming to that. We're in our own place. But that doesn't mean we can't work together because we're on the same sea in the same storm. It doesn't mean that we can't communicate and understand each other. It doesn't mean that we can't share who we are and recognize we're not the next person, and that's okay. We're all in the same sea, in the same storm, but we're each in our own boat. I know that's true because I saw it first on Facebook. But again, there's one of those moments where you think to yourself, but I have seen truth. I have seen people. I have seen and heard. Yes, you have. Now's the time for us to be discerning about what we're hearing. Now's the time it's always a time for us to be discerning about what we're hearing. It's also a time for us to be very discerning about how we're communicating and how we're sharing. Whether it's the hope and the joy that we're getting through this, or whether it's a little bit of the anxiety and fear that maybe we need to be more cautious. Communication, relationships are a two-way street. It's not just what you say, it's how it's heard, right? And we famously, we're really good at listening to respond, not to learn. Right? As the other person is talking, you're already thinking how you're going to respond to that, instead of actually taking in what it is they're offering. Whether it's their story, whether it's news, whatever it is. We need to listen. We need to hear, and we need to be open to hearing it. That's what happens in this story. This story doesn't end with, wow, Paul did the perfect speech, everybody's on his side, yay. It doesn't end like that. What it ends with is the crowd basically going, I think we need to think about this more, and we need to hear more about it. And at the very end of this the whole chapter here, I think he has 2 converts. But the rest of the crowd wants to hear more. They don't run him out of town. They want to hear more. It's not just how you say it, it's a willingness to hear it. It's not just a willingness to hear it, it's also how you say it. We need all the pieces. This is why it's the kind of story we need right now. We need people to offer information and news. We need people to offer their stories, and we need to be able to hear. We need to be able to listen. I think that's what's happening here in this story. And I'd like to think it's what can happen here in this story. As we go forward in the next few weeks, I hope that's how we go forward, because there'll be setbacks. There'll be opportunities for us to think somebody could be blamed for this. There'll be opportunities for us to think, I don't know that that's right because I think this. Sure, there will be. But those are all opportunities for us to share, because we're all on the same sea, each in our own little boat. But we can get there together.